Bampton School's contact with the International Space Station. Tuesday, the 8th of October, 2019, 1:51:26.
Good afternoon. So I've already spoken to some of you this morning about what's going to happen this afternoon. So we have got the really exciting opportunity to speak to a NASA astronaut who's on the International Space Station right now. Can anyone from the classes I spoke to this morning remember how far up into space is the International Space Station? Right in the middle. Shout it out. How many kilometres? Bit more? Someone shouted out. Yeah, 400 kilometres above us, which, as we learned this morning, isn't actually that far. So Manchester, Leeds, Newcastle, all those places further north are actually further than 400 kilometres. But obviously you have to actually get up there in a rocket first of all, so that's the challenge. But anyway, I know you've got lots of questions for Drew Morgan this afternoon. He's up there on the space station though with two Russian astronauts, Oleg and Alexander, two female NASA astronauts, Christina and Jessica, and an Italian astronaut, Luca Parmitano. So he's going to be up there. You'll only get to speak to him though, but hopefully he'll be able to answer all the questions that you've prepared. So I'm talking about the International Space Station. However, I know that you've got a great video ready to watch, which tells us a little bit more about the history of space and how we actually came to build the space station and have astronauts up there that are able to talk to you today. So I think we've got the video ready.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Cool. Okay, so that gives you a bit of an idea about the history of humans in space and where we are today, as I said, with the International Space Station. So I already said before, I work for the UK Space Agency as the education manager, and I have the fantastic job of coming and talking to students like you and hopefully getting you inspired enough to maybe want a job in the space industry in the future. So before I did this job, I used to work for the European Space Agency, and I was one of the astronaut trainers. So I used to train the astronauts and the ground control crew on human behavior and performance. So good communication skills and teamwork, and stress management and conflict resolution and things like that. So that's when I first met some of the astronauts like Tim Peake that I was talking to the classes about this morning. So hopefully, just in case, and Kieran will talk to you about this a bit more, just in case we don't get time for Drew to answer all 20 questions, I hope I can step in and answer the few that might remain after that. So as I said, that was when I was working at ESA. Before that, I was at university. Before that, obviously, I used to go to school like you guys. And I really wish that something like this happened when I was at school to inspire me into the space industry a little bit sooner than I did. But I've heard that you've done lots, or I can see that you've done lots of really cool space projects. And I've heard that you've got a great video that I'm really excited to have a little watch now. And you can see what the rest of your school's been doing.
And we've got a time period of about 10 minutes where you can speak to the person on the International Space Station. Are you excited yet? Okay.
As you see, I've switched to that one, and the antenna's turning around to point towards it.
Over!
My name is George.
Yeah, let's give yourselves a round of applause. That is absolutely amazing. I can see how much work you've put into there. That's really, really incredible to see. So well done to all of you. And hopefully this will inspire you to do even more space stuff in the future and some more pictures and astronauts. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Kieran Morgan. He is the Operations UK lead for the ARISS team. And he's going to explain to you a little bit more about what's going to happen today. And then I'll take over and answer any more questions. Okay.
Thanks, Susan.
Hi everyone, I'm Tim Peake and welcome aboard the International Space Station, where we're orbiting Earth 16 times every day. One of the most rewarding activities that some astronauts undertake on orbit is to talk to schools using the space station's ham radio. Now these are events that are planned by ARISS, which is a worldwide group of amateur radio volunteers who are dedicated to introducing young people and students to science, technology, engineering and mathematics.
Welcome everyone, my name is Kieran and I've been helping Mr. Bull and Mrs. Bull to actually do all of the setting up and everything for you today so that we can talk to the International Space Station and speak to an astronaut called Drew Morgan, who has got 4 children just like you as well. So he's a dad who's got some children. He's a dad in space and he's got some children on Earth who keep looking up to him every so often and seeing what he's doing. Now, who can tell me the speed that the space station is traveling at? Go on then. 5 miles per second, that's right. And what's even bigger is when we convert that to miles per hour, which is normally the speed that you see your parents driving in a car. So what sort of speed do cars go at? Who can give me an estimate? 60 miles an hour. Well, the space station is going at 17,500 miles an hour. So it's enormous numbers. And as you said, 5 miles per second. And that would take us from here to Tiverton in just 1 second. And how long does it take to do that in the car? About 15 to half an hour. So the space station is going incredibly fast. But not only have we got the speed that's going really fast, we've also got enormous distances in space. So where's Alfie? Where's Alfie? If you come on down, Alfie. So I've done a little trick, and I've shrunk the Earth so that it's now just down to this size. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get Alfie to hold the Earth like that and just go over and stand by the chair. Now, if that's the Earth, who can have a guess what this is supposed to be? Go on. The moon? The moon, perfect. Now, what we're going to do is a little competition to see who can guess how far away the moon would be if it was on the same scale. So I'm going to stand here and say, who thinks it's going to be about here from the Earth? Yeah. Who thinks it's going to be about here? Okay, a couple of hands coming up, that's good. Who thinks it's going to be right over here? Most people's hands are up, and that's right. So the distances are enormous. Now, you've all been studying the planets and everything. Can anyone have a guess what this planet represents? Go on. Yeah, go on. Okay, go on. Not Mercury? Mars. And have a guess how far away Mars would be on the same scale. Okay, well, I'm going to start from here. So I'm going to give the ball to this little chap. And I'm going to say, throw it over your head, and let's see how far it goes behind you. And somebody can catch it and pass it back even further. You ready? Steady, go. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Right to the very back. Right to the very back. In fact, we would have to send that person all the way to Tiverton, would you believe it? It's that far away from us. So distances and speeds in space are absolutely enormous. They're mind-boggling numbers. But what we're going to do today is we're going to actually try and talk to astronaut Drew Morgan. But what I'm going to do first of all, I'm going to just sort of very quickly introduce you to my team, because there's a lot of us around here sort of sitting, getting all the bits and pieces ready. So I've said my name is Kieran. Sitting at the back here, we've got Noel and Graham and Chris. Now, those three people are actually going to work the radios for us, and we'll talk about them in just a moment. And over on my left here, we've got Frank, who is helping to stream this out, so all your parents and family can actually watch live and see what's going on with the event here today. And I've also got John, Phil, and John, who are helpers with the antennas and with all of the audio to make sure it all works properly. Now, one of the things that we get to do whenever we're asking the questions of the astronaut is we want to say a big thank you to him. So what I want to do is I want to do a little practice and see how well you can cheer whenever I ask you to say, let's say thank you to Drew. Okay? So if I give you a countdown from 3 down to 0, do you think you can give me a cheer? Yeah? Okay, so make it as loud as you can. You ready? 3, 2, 1.
I'm sorry, Kieran, I couldn't hear that at all with my headphones.
Okay, so we've got to do it even louder. And if you can stamp your feet and clap your hands, okay? So let's try that this time. 3, 2, 1. That was better, but I think you can do even louder than that. Do you think so? Okay, one last go, and let's see if we can do it really, really loud. 3, 2, 1. Okay, that's perfect. So that is perfect. Yeah, Drew will definitely hear that, and I think everybody else will hear it as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand back to Susan, and she's going to ask some questions, and we're going to explain a little bit more about what we're doing and how we're doing it. Okay? So here's Susan for you.
Great. So because we have the ARISS team with us, I'm sure you've got lots of questions you'd like to ask them, and I've got a few of my own. So I'm just going to ask Kieran a few things to hopefully explain a little bit more about what's going on this afternoon. And maybe the first question we might have is what ARISS actually stands for. Oh, you can see it up there, no?
Right. So ARISS ARISS stands for Amateur Radio on the International Space Station.
And what exactly is amateur radio?
So amateur radio, how many of you have got hobbies, fun things that you like to do? Yeah? Well, amateur radio is a hobby for us, and what we do with it is that we learn, we practice, we experiment, and we learn about radio. And it's something that we do in our pastimes, just like you might ride your bicycle, or you might play games on the computer console.
Great, and I saw in your communications team what looked like some radio stations that you had set up there. So some of that team, it looked like you were doing a bit of amateur radio. But yeah, the team here get to talk to people in the UK and all over the world using amateur radio. So that's what we're using today to speak to the International Space Station. But you're probably all thinking, hang on a minute, I've got a mobile phone, my parents have got a mobile phone. Why don't we just call up Drew on our phones?
Now, that's a very good question. Anybody have any idea why we can't give Drew a call? Go on. Actually, it does. There's Wi-Fi and internet on the International Space Station. But it's very slow. Very, very slow. Go on. Well, you would need to have a very strong signal, and that's why we've got all of our equipment here today. So what we're doing is that you can't just phone the International Space Station. It's special telephone numbers or special radio links set up in the control centers in Houston, in Cologne, and in Russia. And they can talk to the astronauts whenever they're ready and whenever they want to. But if we want to talk to the astronauts, we have to use a radio. Anybody know what a radio is? Yeah, go on. Okay, anybody else? Yes, you do. So how many of you have listened to radios in your car with your parents or your family? Yep. How many of you have watched television? Yeah. How many of you have used the internet? Well, that's all radio in one way, shape, form, or another. And what we're doing is we're making a special use of it today to actually talk to Drew. Now, what we've got just behind Graham here is a special radio. Can everyone see it with the green light and the knobs and everything on it? Yeah? That's our special radio. That's our special link to Drew today. And that goes outside to the big antennas. And I remember seeing some of you out there yesterday whenever we were putting them into position. Who's seen all of the antennas? Have you seen them moving around yet? Yes. Well, they're big, and the reason we need them to be that big is that we need something called line of sight. So if I'm standing down here, I can only see a certain distance into the back of the hall. But if I stand up on the steps here, like this, I can see further. And that's what we're trying to do with Drew today. We're trying to see how far away we can get him on the radio, and he'll be about 2,500 miles away from us by the time we hear him, hopefully hear him. And we'll hear him for about 10 minutes. And it'll all go through that radio and those big antennas that we have sitting outside.
So why can we only hear him for 10 minutes then in relation to that?
So, can you all see the screen on the computer? Can you see the circle that goes around the International Space Station? Let's have a guess. Who can tell me what that circle represents? Go on. It's the area that we can hear the signal, yes. So what we have to do is we have to watch for when that signal comes up across Bampton. And when it comes up across Bampton, it'll go blue for us. And that's the first point that Drew will actually be able to hear us. And that's going to be 2,500 miles away. Now that circle will keep moving for the 10 minutes, and it'll take 10 minutes to go from the front edge of the circle to the back edge of the circle. And what do you think is going to happen at the very end? He'll cut out. So we've got a very limited time in which we can actually talk to him, and we've got to cram in our questions.
Lovely. So you're saying that when that circle starts coming over Bampton, we might hear, what might we hear? Some white noise, perhaps? It'd be quite quiet.
We'll hear some noise indeed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get everybody, or the guys, to turn the noise up so you can hear the sort of noise that will be on the radio. Can you hear that? Yeah? Okay. So that's great. So that noise, that we call that white noise because it's just noise. There's nothing particular in it. But one of the things that we will be aiming to do is actually try and find Drew's voice. And when we hear him to begin with, he's going to be very, very quiet. So how many of you are really good at listening? Yeah? Everybody. That's good. So we need to be really, really quiet. So what we're going to do, in a few minutes, we're going to turn that noise on so that you can actually get to hear it for a little bit longer. Okay. We can get to hear that for a little bit longer and sort of get accustomed to it. And then what I want you to do is listen very, very carefully and see if you can hear the astronaut's voice whenever it starts up. Okay? And that'll be in 5 minutes, as you've just heard someone call out for me.
Fab. So it'll be really, really quiet. What I'm actually going to get you to do, if that's okay, Kieran, is when you start to hear Drew's voice, if you can really, really quietly, but when we hear his voice, you can start putting your hands up and obviously then put them down afterwards. But as soon as you're listening really, really carefully, and as soon as the white noise kind of stops and you can start to hear Drew, the astronaut's voice, you can all start putting your hands up if you can hear him, okay? But what's really, really important, and a lot of people forget this, we've got our wonderful questions here, is to make sure you also listen to what the answers are, because sometimes we get so excited that we can hear his voice that we don't actually listen to what he's saying. Okay, so make sure that we listen really carefully to what the questions are, and I know they've practiced, and they're going to give really clear questions, because Drew also needs to be able to hear you guys as well and hear what you're saying, but then the rest of us also need to listen to what Drew's answer is as well, don't they?
So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to talk to the people asking the questions for a few moments, because you guys are the important ones. So do you remember how we did the little practice earlier on today? Yeah, so let's see if we can do that again. Remember to read your questions nice and clearly, and to come up and be looking at me whenever you're ready itself. And then we'll try and work through as many questions as we can possibly get through with Drew himself. So who's excited about this? Oh, I was expecting somebody to cheer. Who's excited? Yay. Very good. Okay, so we've got 3 minutes to go. Who can tell me where the circle around the space station is just starting to touch? Go on. It's touching a bit of Africa. Does anybody know what that country is that Susan was just pointing to? Close. Close. Spain. Spain and Portugal, yeah. So it'll be approaching us very, very shortly. We're going to have to listen really quietly and really carefully. And as a little competition, I want to see somebody put their hands up whenever they hear Drew's voice, okay? We have to be really quiet to begin with. But if you can hear his voice, put your hand up and hear it, okay? Right. I'm going to hand back to Susan now while we get ready here itself. And hopefully we'll be talking to Drew in just a few moments.
Fab. Thank you so much, Kieran. So really excited. I think we've got 2 minutes to go now, so I'm going to shut up in 1 minute. So we can see, as I said, this is the thing that you're all looking out for, is this circle here, and as it's going over Spain and Portugal, it's gone over Portugal, over Spain, it'll start hitting France, and then we'll get to the south of England there, and we're not right on the tip, but we're in the southwest of England there, and we'll start to hear that white noise that we'll put on, and then obviously we'll get our questioners up and they'll start to talk, and Drew's going to talk back to us. Okay, does that sound good? Yeah, good. We still excited? Yeah. And we're going to be really, really quiet? Really, really quiet? Yeah. Can we whisper? Yeah. Okay. 1 minute to go. So we're going to put the white noise in 30 seconds. Yep. Yeah. Great. Okay. And then afterwards, once we've been really quiet and we've listened really carefully to the questions and we've listened really, really carefully to the answers, and then after that, Kieran's going to come back and ask us all to thank him. And we're going to thank him by doing what? Clapping and stamping our feet, aren't we? Okay.
We might need to get some of the adults to help get the children going.
Ah.
So if all the teachers could be ready to help the children cheer, that would be really helpful.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Okay, so listening carefully and handing back over to you.
So this is it. We're going to start doing it in a minute. I'm going to get Corey to come up and be ready for the first question. And we're going to go. November Alpha 1 Sierra Sierra, this is Golf Bravo 4 Bravo Papa Sierra, listening for scheduled contact with the International Space Station. Over. November Alpha 1 Sierra Sierra, this is Golf Bravo 4 Bravo Papa Sierra. Are you receiving? Over. November Alpha 1 Sierra Sierra, this is Golf Bravo 4 Bravo Papa Sierra. Are you receiving? Over. November Alpha 1 Sierra Sierra, this is Golf Bravo 4 Bravo Papa Sierra. Hello Drew and welcome to the Bampton Primary School here in Devon in the United Kingdom. We've got you very weakly at the moment, but are you receiving us? Over.
We have you well enough to proceed. Welcome aboard the International Space Station. God bless you.
Thanks very much. Are you ready for your first question? Over.
I'm ready.
I am Corey. Has the International Space Station ever suffered any damage from a meteor strike? Over.
Great question, and I was just on a spacewalk 2 days ago, and I could see small evidence of very small micrometeorites that have struck the space station, but luckily we do protect the space station from anything much larger than an apple size that could be in orbit around the Earth or could strike it. We track that from the ground, and we help the International Space Station avoid an orbital collision with an object that could potentially cause damage. But there definitely are small objects out there that can cause very minor damage to the exterior of the space station.
I am Thea. How can space be made accessible to people with disabilities? Over.
That's a very interesting question, and as we come into space, we realize that there are definitely, we make it more and more accessible to more and more people, and that would include being inclusive of those people with disabilities. In addition, some of the science and technology that we develop on board the International Space Station could help improve life for people who have disabilities living on Earth.
I am Sophie. How long will it take you to get used to gravity again when you get home? Over.
Well, my very good friend Nick Hague just returned to the Earth a couple of days ago, and it looks like it takes 2 or 3 days before you kind of feel normal again, and then you regain your strength over the subsequent weeks. So it does take some time to get used to.
This is Jessie. What would
happen if you took a snowball into space? Over.
I think that if you packed a snowball into some sort of container where you could get it to the International Space Station and you could open up inside the International Space Station, it wouldn't melt any faster inside the space station. But if we took it outside into open space, like on my spacewalk, it would almost instantaneously vaporize.
I'm Rufus. How do you get to and from the International Space Station? Over.
Presently, for operations on board the International Space Station, we ride to the International Space Station on board a Soyuz rocket launching from Kazakhstan, and then we return again to Kazakhstan when our mission is over.
I am Alfie. If you cut yourself in space, who acts as the doctor to fix it for you? Over.
Well, I just so happen to be a medical doctor by training, and so if I cut myself, I probably would, if any of my crewmates cut themselves, I would help them. I would probably be the logical person for them to go to. If I cut myself, my crewmates are also trained to assist with such injuries like that. And so we all help each other, and there's no requirement to have a doctor on board, but we just so happen to right now.
This is Willow. Do you dream differently in space or dream of anything in particular? Over.
It seems like I dream like I do on Earth. Sleep is very good up here, is very comfortable because your body doesn't require to move around without the absence of gravity. You don't shift positions as much as you do lying in a bed. For that reason, I sleep well and I sleep and dream normally.
This is Jacob. If I kick a football in space, how far would it travel? Over.
If we were out in deep space, it would theoretically go on forever and ever. If you went outside of the space station and you kicked it, it would also take off in its own direction, but it basically would stay in orbit around the Earth, just like the International Space Station.
I am Maya. When you were a child, did you want to go to space, and is there anything that disappointed you about it? Over.
I definitely dreamed about going to space when I was a child. I also aspired and very much looked up to astronauts. And no, I'm not disappointed at all. I get to work with wonderful people, and we have a wonderful job up here on the space station, but also a wonderful job back on Earth representing our space agency, our country, and the International Space Station.
This is Hetty. What does it feel like when you're in a rocket and you're about to get shot into space? Over.
Well, as you can imagine, it's extremely exciting. But we receive years and years of training before we get to that point. So most astronauts describe themselves as very calm up to that point. And then when that rocket starts to accelerate and we feel the forces of that rocket faster and faster, we get very excited.
Corey asking Oliver's question. If you could make one improvement to the International Space Station, what would it be? Over.
Well, I think I would add another module, having more and more space up here. Always exciting. Right now it's about the size of a house that had about 5 bedrooms. So it's plenty of space for 6 people, but if we had more, it would be even more fun.
This is Thea asking Nancy's question. The International Space Station travels at 5 miles per second. Can you feel it moving when travelling fast like you can on Earth?
Actually, the only way that I would know that we were moving is when I look out the window and I see us traveling over the Earth. But if I don't look outside the window, the space station is extremely stable and there's no perception of motion at all. But in fact, we're traveling at 17,500 miles an hour.
This is Sophie asking Eben's question. The International Space Station is so fast, how does it not crash into other satellites that are also in orbit? Over.
Well, just just like airplanes on the ground are helped by air traffic control to prevent them from colliding with one another, we have extensive ground teams that keep track of where satellites are and where the International Space Station is and make sure that they deconflict that at all times. And if we ever needed to perform a maneuver, we can fire thrusters and change our orbit slightly to avoid a collision.
This is Jesse asking Sorrel's question. Did you have any concerns looking back at Earth for the first time? Over.
Well, certainly my first impression looking back at the Earth was no concerns in terms of I felt very, very happy to be looking back at my home planet. It's such a beautiful planet. But the concerns I do have is that when I do look down at the Earth, I can see evidence that we as human beings do have an impact on our planet that we can see from space. There's clear evidence when we look down at it.
Rufus asking Macy's question. How many planets have you seen from the International Space Station? Over.
Well, certainly the planet that we see best is Earth. It fills the windows that we look out. But we also see the moon, which is a satellite, of course, of the Earth that we can see occasionally. But one of my crewmates was able to pull out binoculars, and we were able to look at Jupiter recently. And without looking through the atmosphere, it's much clearer with much less powerful binoculars. And we were even able to see the moons of Jupiter orbiting around it.
Alfie asking Ellie's question. If you could grow any planet on the International Space Station, what would it be? Over.
Well, we are actually growing plants right now on board the International Space Station. We're growing mustard greens, and we would be interested in growing anything that we could potentially eat, which would be a very important capability for us to go deeper and deeper into space and eventually go on to the moon and to Mars to provide fresh food for astronauts that are in space for a long period of time.
This is Willow asking Eve's question. How long have you been on the International Space Station, and how long do you think you could stay there for?
Over.
NA1SS, NA1SS, this is Golf Bravo 4, Bravo Papa Sierra. Thanks very much, Drew. Everyone here wants to say a big thank you. NA1SS, NA1SS, this is Golf Bravo 4, Bravo Papa Sierra, signing off from the International Space Station. Best wishes, Drew. Wow, how exciting was that? We got 16 questions asked, 17 questions asked. So what we're going to do is we're going to get Susan to come up and we're going to run through the other questions itself, okay? But that was absolutely excellent. So well done to everyone on the question asking. You were very, very clear on your words, so well done. And let's ask the questions for the other people that didn't get to have their questions asked.
Great, and well done to the ARISS team. That was a really, really good contact. 17 questions. Wow. Okay, I'll answer the last question because I don't know if everyone could hear the answer. So the question was how long Drew's been on the space station. He landed there, or launched and landed there on the 20th of July this year. So he's been there for a couple of months. He'll be there for 6 months in total. Some of the astronauts, they have done experiments where they've been up there for a year to see what happens to them and their bodies and whether they can cope. So if we're thinking about going to Mars, that can take a good 9 months at least to get there. You stay there and come back. They could be in space for 2-3 years. So that's where they're doing experiments now on the space station to see how our bodies cope. So next question. If you want to come up, actually it's the easiest.
What time does your clock show on the space station? Is it USA, UK, Russian or Japan time?
Yeah, so the time is actually, it's called Greenwich Mean Time, which is similar to British, to UK time. Right now they're an hour behind us, okay? So when we put our clocks back in autumn sometime, then we'll be at the same time as the International Space Station. And the reason why they chose that time is because obviously a lot of the control centers are in the US, in Houston, and in Russia traditionally, and they kind of wanted a time in the middle so that it wasn't the Russians always on their night shift or the Americans always on their night shift when they were trying to control the station and talk to the astronauts. So they chose Greenwich Mean Time in the middle. Yeah, next question, question 19. Stand here.
Do you get to keep your customized seat or anything else as a souvenir of your trip?
Okay, so they have to, you might have seen the pictures of them in their seats which are molded to them, so they are customized. They don't get to keep them. However, what a lot of them do is they'll take up, they have very, if you've ever seen them in the Soyuz rocket, it's very, very cramped. But they do get to have some of their own crew cargo packages, and they'll take up things there like photos or mementos of things that they can take up to the space station, bring back down with them, and either keep or give to friends and family as souvenirs saying this has been in space. So yes, they do get to do that. Great, thank you. And I think we've got one last question, question 20.
We are getting aware about the amount of rubbish on Earth. Are you worried about the amount of space junk, and can you see it?
Okay, so there was a question and which Drew answered really well about space debris. So around the Earth, there is literally millions of pieces of space debris, and that's from previous satellites and things that have gone up. So all the satellites are used for communications and for navigation and things like that. So that's what helps you. If your parents ever use the GPS, the satellite navigation system in the car, that's using satellites. And as I said, a lot of communications as well using satellites. But all that is then orbiting around us, and there are literally millions of pieces of space debris up there. And they do have to worry about it. So if you didn't hear Drew's answer, the space station is protected. It's got lots of layers, so it's protected if debris knocks into it. If it's very small pieces, they're okay. Drew actually said that a small piece bumped into the space station a couple of days ago, and normally it's fine. If it's a problem, they can obviously literally plug the leak. But if it's quite a big piece of debris, then they actually will move the space station slightly to get out the way of big pieces of debris, so they don't have to worry about it. Great, I think that was question 20. So I thank you all again for listening so carefully. I know it's been a long time and we might be getting a bit fidgety, but hopefully that was worth sitting still for and listening to Drew Morgan. And thanks again to the ARISS team. And I think we're passing back over to the head, or to Kieran? Yeah, so I'm passing back over to the head teacher.
I just want to say some thank yous for what has been an absolutely wonderful afternoon, a fantastic period of time for the school. And before we do, I'd just like to look at the people around the room who have been involved in this whole project and give them a super round of applause before we start, please. Oh, bigger than that. Bigger than that. The school and the hall has been completely transformed this week. As you can see around the room, all the technical equipment and the displays, and it's not happened by chance, it's happened by people working really, really hard for the school. So I'm going to say some thank yous. I'm going to try and keep it brief because I've been told to. And there's a lot of people to get through. So first, I just want to say thank you to Drew Morgan, the astronaut. If he can hear me, I'm not sure. See if he can hear from here. Go, big shout, round of applause for him. And I'd like to thank Kieran and the whole of the ARISS team. The ARISS team have come here today, and they were here yesterday setting up. They don't get paid for this. They came on their own just for you. They've travelled from all over the UK, I believe, Some of them got stuck in traffic yesterday and we had a few difficulties along the way. So can just say a big thank you. You have inspired these children, and that has been down to you predominantly, because without you, we wouldn't be able to make the connection. So give them a huge round of applause, everybody. Oh, and we have a presentation from the children, if I can juggle, to say thank you for all of your efforts. So thank you very much. Round of applause again, please. Thank you. Thank you, Kieran and the team. Also, I'd like to thank Susan for presenting today and coming along and spending time with the children. You've been fascinating. I can't believe how much information you have in your head. So give them a super round of applause for the presentation. Thank you. And I'd like to thank as well the children over here, but also the children over here, because the questions that you posed today were really, really thoughtful. I know lots of other people had lots of good questions as well, but the way you delivered them, you were clear and precise, and that made the whole event really, really more straightforward to happen. So thank you to the children here and all the children that have been working really hard in the school and also have posed their own questions again. So huge round of applause for all the children in the school. Okay, and there's a few other people that we need to speak through because of time. I'd like to thank Steve Smith, part of the Exmoor radio group, who's been coming to our after-school club, and he's been set up all his technical equipment. You saw him in one of the videos there. A thank you for the parents who have helped out. Parents have been here over the weekend and done lots of things in preparation for the whole event. A few names. Mr. Clark, Phil Clark, where is he? As always, he's somewhere. There he is at the top. Turn around, give Phil Clark a round of applause over there. He's always hiding somewhere. And Phil set all of the lights up to make this such a wonderful event. Thank you to Laura Grant behind me, who always likes to keep out of the limelight. I always try and drag her back in. So I've been doing the photography. Round of applause for Laura. Thank you very much, Laura. Round of applause for Mrs. Bull, Lucy Bull at the back, who's been doing all our PR and lots of other things beside Mrs. Bull. Thank you very much. Okay, we've got teachers, we've got staff. The teachers and TAs have been working hard, really hard, completely redesigned the curriculum over the last few weeks, and that was going to continue for this event. That was really hard work. The amount of work that the children, high quality work the children have got through over the last few weeks already is incredible. You can see it all over the back of the hall, and it was also in the presentation. So for the staff and the teachers, the TAs, but also the kitchen staff, who have changed the whole of their routines over the last few days to make sure we can have the hall free, and we've had lunches elsewhere. So that's been a really big reorganisation for the school. So round of applause for the teachers, the staff, the TAs, everybody in the school that's been made it happen. So wherever they are, thank you for all of the press that have come along and really made this the publicity for this event. So lifted the profile of Bampton School and the community as well across the whole of Devon. So thank you for the press. Thank you for Hugh Saxby and Humphrey Bridges. I'm not sure if they're still seeing this, but they're down at the Riverside Hall, and they've set up the hall so parents can see it. So should we give them a wave in case they can see us? I'm not sure if they can, but give them a round of applause as well for helping us out. We have the planetarium here next week, and Sophie Tyler for Exmoor Dark Skies is going to be setting that for us. So a round of applause for her. And we're nearly there. We've then got the Mid-Devon District Council, the Bampton Town Council, and the Lark Centre for helping us from the funding to set this up as well. So give them a huge round of applause, because it wouldn't have happened without them. And I think that's pretty much everybody, apart from saying thank you for all the dignitaries at the back to come along. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for the members of the alumnus mat that have come along to support today as well. So I think we should give everybody, I think I've covered most people. No. We're going to do Mr. Bull as well, are we? Okay, can we have a huge round of applause for Mr. Bull. Mr. Bull, can you take centre stage? Believe it or not, I was going to get there in a moment, but thank you for that. We have a gift for you. A gift from the PTFA to say thank you very much for all of your help. Can I just say, because this needs to be said, Mr. Bull came to me probably about a year ago, and he said, I've got a great idea. He says, let's talk to the International Space Station. And I said, have you been drinking this? It feels like it's been a long day. And I said, you what? How do we do that? And he said, no, it's no problem at all. He said, I know these people that can do it. And once we go over the technical difficulties and the thought process behind it, and we talked about the curriculum, and we talked about the opportunities that we would have and give for the whole community, it snowballed just like the question that we had earlier on about the snowball in space. And it became what it has been today. And all of this has been, down to everybody's input, the whole community in trying to make it happen. But Mr. Bull has been central to everything that's happened. He's been working so hard, not just over the last few days, but over the last year, talking to people, making sure that people are connected to each other. He's involved the press. And this would never have happened if it wasn't for Mr. Bull. So if you've got the biggest round of applause with the stamping of your feet and the clapping of your hands, I think it needs to happen right now. Okay, so absolutely fantastic day. So well done. It's been a brilliant day. Thank you for everybody again. Thank you everyone for coming along. Thank you for children for sitting so quietly. It's been a long afternoon. And I think we'll just have one final round of applause, because why not?